Small Business Development Center, an arm of PCC, but you are national in terms of the work that you're doing, and probably like Chambers of Commerce, never more important to entrepreneurs than right now in terms of helping guide through these circumstances, and just really appreciate that you've taken your time to come be with us today virtually and walk us through the Small Business Development Center, what things, resources you have available and services for a small business. So Tammy, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Deanna. And we have had the fortunate opportunity to be partners with the Hillsboro Chamber for many decades now, and we're really grateful for that. My colleague Oscar Novello is joining me this morning, who is with our Oregon SBDC Network's Capital Access Team, and also the PCC SBDC Rapid Response Team. We'll be hearing more from Oscar in a few minutes. I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center and Global Trade Center, and I recently had someone ask me, how do you know how to lead through this moment in time? How do your small business advisors know how to help? And how do you bring it all together so that they know about you? And it's opportunities like this, Deanna, that really help us to help the community, because you are helping us to be known. You know, it is a moment in time where we are all trained for, and so we would never have imagined that we would be both experiencing a public health crisis and then an ensuing economic crisis. So we're going to give you this morning, we're going to share information about the small business.
Tammy, can I interrupt for just a second?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was on my end or not, but it's breaking up quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
I'm done.
Are you able to hear me okay now?
Now it's better. Do others, just by raise of your hand, is it better now for everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'll sit closer to my computer. Does that help?
Yes, that's great.
Oh,
thank you, Tammy.
Okay, good. Thanks for letting me know about that. So the Small Business Development Center is here to help small businesses start, grow, innovate, adapt, and develop their businesses in ordinary times. But we're also here to help businesses receive the resources that they need to respond to their current economic conditions, to recover through it, and to develop resilience with it. And so that's a bit about what our presentation is about today. Over the last 6 weeks, I've had the opportunity to speak with many small businesses who are asking some of the questions that I have up on the screen right now, and that is, how do I make sense of all of this? And my business was doing well before, but now it's not. And I have to close my doors and I have to lay off employees. And on top of that, I have this confusing information about stimulus funding, and how do I make sense of that? How do I make sense of the myriad of resources that are available and identify which is the right resource for my business right now? Who will help me to understand my business viability? Who will help me to understand my cash flow and my path forward? And how do I innovate through this adversity if it's at all possible for me to do? I think the main thing for me to share with you right now is that you are not alone. These are common questions we hear every day, and these are questions that we're helping small businesses look at every day. So the core services of a small business development center, whether it's the Small Business Development Center at PCC or any other location, is one-on-one business advising at no cost. And during this time, that business advising is, of course, virtual by use of technology such as Zoom. We're very fortunate today to be able to use Zoom technology and other medium to communicate with small businesses. In addition to the business advising, in the last 4 weeks, we have established 2 very important communities, one for retail and one for restaurant, which are called the PCC Virtual Meetup for restaurant and Virtual Meetup for retail. And on this page, there is a link. I'm going to see if I can get the link to work, Deanna, bear with me. It is not wanting to work. Okay. We do have a link which you will be able to have available to you. Deanna is making this PowerPoint available to you. But the meetups are coming together as communities of retail entrepreneurs and communities of restaurant entrepreneurs who are creating a supportive environment to share experiences, to share resources, share ideas, and share innovations for moving through this adverse economic crisis period. And so we encourage you to take a look at this if you are a retail entrepreneur or a restaurant entrepreneur. After a month of offering this, and they're offered twice a month at no cost, we've more than doubled the size of the community in these meetups. And it's not Portland centric at all. We had an entrepreneur just a couple of days ago from Port Townsend, Washington, come into the retail meetup because they have very, very few resources in Port Townsend for small businesses today. We had Idaho, we had California, and of course we have Oregon across the state coming into these meetups. The other thing that the SBDC offers is orientations, general orientations. Even within this economic crisis, we are hearing about small businesses who want to start business. And so they're coming into orientation in a variety of training programs. We also have the Rapid Response Team, which was created specifically for this moment in time. Oscar Novello is a member of this team. Bruce Meltzer, who is also on the Capital Access team, is a member of this team. And Jackie Babicki-Peterson, who has been with our SBDC for nearly 20 years, is a member of this team. And what that means for small businesses is if you have an economic crisis occurring right now, you do not have to wait to meet with an advisor. And I'm going to have Oscar speak a little bit more to the Rapid Response Team, and the links at the end of the presentation will share with you how to access the Rapid Response Team.
Thank you, Tammy. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, the Rapid Response Team has been dealing with various situations that arise for our small business community. And we're trying to help wherever we can best help. Just to give you an example, we've dealt with anything from folks that are considering the last resort, the last step, bankruptcy, all the way to folks that are in a stronger position and are basically considering which loan to take, either the EIDL or the PPP, and what the benefits and the cons and pros are. So we're kind of seeing everything across the spectrum. And we have different expertise. My expertise is in the financial side of things, the loan side of things, but we have folks that are much more expert at, let's say, retail, restaurants, and all the things that go with how to promote that and get social media on your side and take orders online and all that. One of the things that I want to do is actually change the slide and talk to you a little bit about the different options that are available or that have been made available to us.
And Oscar, you should be able to change the slide on your view now.
Let me see. There we go, I think. Yep, it worked. Okay. I always get happy when these small miracles take place. So the first of the two, and I'm sure that most of you have heard of these two programs. The first of the two is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, also known as EIDL. And it's aptly named EIDL because right now it's pretty idle for a lot of folks. And that's unfortunate, but we're hoping that that state of idleness can change, because this is the first program that came out probably about, what, 5 weeks ago now? I forget. But this is the program where you directly apply through the SBA for a loan. It's a low interest loan of 3.75, and the loan, let me go back. The loan is had a component where you could get up to $10,000 up front as a grant. And there was a little bit of controversy with that one, because at first they said it's going to be 10,000 for everybody, and then they kind of changed it to 1,000 per employee. That was kind of a little messy. And the other thing is that, unfortunately, a lot of people have not heard back from the SBA on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program status for their particular loan submission. So what I recommend to folks is to contact the SBA. There is a phone number that I can share in the chat in a little bit that you can dial, and you can speak to a live person and ask them about the loan status for your EIDL. The other program that has received probably more attention in the news is the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program. And that one, it had received a lot of news because it had more funding. It involved the banks. It had some goods and some bads. You know, some controversy arose as far as how banks implemented the program, essentially being accused of picking, you know, the bigger customers versus the smaller customers. And then finally, difficulties with applying and funds running out. So at this point, what's happening is that the House is considering the legislation that was recently passed by the Senate. And if that's approved today, which seems to be what we're hearing is going to happen, then we'll know more about the details of phase 2. Phase 2 may or may not be the same as phase 1. So the hope is that they tweak it a little bit so that we can have a smoother phase 2. Now, there's been a lot of concern, and I'll address some of these concerns in a bit, but I also wanted to point out that we do have some other funding sources, and I don't know if the link will work. Let me try it. Oh, it worked. Can you folks see the screen? Okay. If you go to this website, if you click on this, you'll go to this SBDC Capital Access Team website. And at the very top, if you click on the disaster assistance funding, you will be taken to a page that has various funding sources segregated by either national scope, state scope, or regional scope. So I'll just click on regional as an example. And it's basically a spreadsheet that has various programs that have been inputted, and some are grants, some are loans, and it tells you where to go for more information. This is something that we're trying to keep up to date because it changes constantly. As you know, some funding sources dry up very quickly, and so we're trying to keep it up to date. This one's a statewide, just to kind of give you a quick flavor. So I would recommend that you check it out. Of course, we have the national, and if you find, you know, anything that's useful, I would say apply as soon as possible. That's what we're finding is super essential these days, is to move quickly. So that kind of segues into the PPP and moving quickly. The Paycheck Protection Program, round 2, is the hope is that folks that need this funding apply quickly, because what's happening is that in phase 1, a lot of when the authorization ran out, a lot of lenders actually continued to take applications, and they did that knowing that, or believing that phase 2 would come, and it seems that that belief is panning out to be true. So what they did is that they started building up their pipeline, their loan pipeline. And what that does is that prepares those borrowers to be first in line to get SBA authorization. Once they get the SBA authorization, they take that they reserve a certain amount of money for that borrower, for that lender. And so then the pot starts getting slimmer and slimmer. So the folks that are in the pipeline, and we don't know how many we have in the pipeline, are going to have first dibs at round 2. So if someone is thinking about PPP or EIDL, but in this case PPP, you need to think very quickly, and you need to act now. You either are going to apply or not, because the pipeline is being built and those funds will eventually be tapped out. And you got to think, I mean, the whole purpose of payroll protection program is to be, to infuse money into small businesses quickly. You want to protect the payroll. So it's not something that you want to access in June when the situation or the crisis is today. That's why everybody's kind of moving quickly here. In terms of what you can do, if you have not applied, look for your lender first and foremost, because your lender should have a relationship with you. They may have everything they need, or they may not, but they may need just a little bit of information. Whereas if you have a lender that doesn't know you, they typically are going to ask you for more information. If your lender does not do the SBA program, or specifically the PPP program, then find a lender. We have heard various stories, of course, of lenders out there not wanting to work with new folks, but there are some out there that are willing to work with everybody. Namely, the online lenders are open for business. However, there's also a credit union locally, and their name is, I think, Point West. They just became a PPP lender, and they're building their pipeline right now as we speak. So we're not endorsing any one lender, but you can look at, you know, Intuit's lending, Cabbage, all those online lenders, and there's probably a lot more that I didn't name, but contact them and get in the pipeline now.
Oscar, I probably should have asked this earlier. Did you want to take questions as we go, or do you want to wait till the end of your presentation and then take all the questions in the chat?
Well, I could take some questions. I think that I lost my little privilege here of moving. Oh no, I didn't. Yeah, if you just give me a minute to run through this slide, I think I can take some questions. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Just to kind of wrap up at least this part, I just wanted for folks to know what we were able to do for them. Rapid response, non-rapid response. Non-rapid response is actually not going to be super slow. It just means it's not triaged, you know, the same way. But what we typically are able to do is look at your numbers, help you plan, help you make decisions. You will, as a business owner, make the decisions. We're there to back you up and to give you feedback. We're also able to help you package your loans. That's kind of our number one strength. A lot of the folks on the Capital Access team have been former bankers, and some are very adept at QuickBooks. So there's a lot of things that we can do for folks. And yeah, Deanna, I'd love to take any questions that folks have about accessing capital.
Excellent. I'm happy to just read through those for you, if that's okay.
Please, that helps.
Okay, so there was a question about whether the EIDL and PPP are both at the 3.75% interest rate.
No, that's a good question. So the EIDL is at 3.75, and the PPP has a funny component. It's famous because it's forgivable if you use, to the extent that you use funds for payroll and some other allowable costs, such as rent, utilities, or if you're paying off a building, a mortgage interest, I believe is also a part of the forgivable amount. So people love it for that reason. They want it to be forgivable. If you use those funds for anything that's not forgivable, then the interest rate is 1% and it's amortized over 2 years. Whereas EIDL is 3.75, amortized over potentially 30 years, but the SBA decides what the amortization is going to be for your case.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is, are there any thoughts on about applying for the PPP through more than one financial institution? Folks have one application in, not really sure where it's at in the pipeline. Does it benefit to go to, any open door you can get through and apply?
We have had folks do that. Actually, a lot of folks have done that. And when they come back and tell us that they've had success, we make sure that they understand that they should only accept one, because an application doesn't get you in trouble. Accepting 2 PPP loans will. So you have to make a decision. And that's where even the law states that you can only have 1 PPP loan. So they refer to the loan, not the application. So yeah, so a lot of folks have actually tried that.
Excellent. How can an owner who has no other employees and hasn't written themselves a check for payroll apply for the PPP?
Yeah, for the PPP, they would have to work with their lender because each lender is looking at or making applications slightly different. But in that case, they can still apply, but they have to apply as a sole proprietor, and because they don't have conventional payroll. So, but PPP does apply, or is available to folks that are sole proprietors, even contractors, or folks in the gig economy. But their way of substantiating their pay is going to be different than someone that has payroll. But they can still apply. They just have to work with their lender to make sure that their lender understands how they pay themselves, and they can document it.
So Oscar, I think I remember that when the PPP first opened up, it opened up later for sole proprietors and independent contractors. Do you know if the second round is going to have that same sort of wait time for independent contractors and sole proprietors?
I'm not sure. We're sort of waiting for that to come down the pipe and for us to be able to read through that, because that was one of the big criticisms that lenders got, that they basically, cherry picked and then kind of left everybody else out to dry. And so my hope is that they don't do the same things, but unless Congress tells them to do otherwise, I'm not sure that they're motivated to do something different. But it's something we're going to be looking at, because that really affected the small business versus the large small businesses.
Excellent. One other question was, can you get both the PPP and the EIDL?
Yes, you can. You can get both the EIDL and the PPP. What I tell folks is that when they get if they get the EIDL, that they use it for other purposes other than the payroll that they're using the PPP for. And so the important thing there is to document accurately. So what a lot of folks have done that have gotten both is that they've put the PPP funds, loan proceeds, I should say, into one checking account that they can easily document the use of, and they've put the EIDL somewhere else, and all they use that for is for other expenses, not including payroll. So other purchases or expenses, so that they can document that they're not double dipping. That's the one thing that the law does say, is that they don't want folks to double dip with the same loan proceeds. The other thing is that to the extent that you get the EIDL and you get the 10,000, or maybe it's less, whatever it be, forgivable component or grant, that I think has to be considered when they forgive your PPP. So they'll deduct the 10,000 from that. But yes, the short answer is you can get both.
And this is more of a comment about somebody's experience with calling the SBA number. This person called the SBA number yesterday to get the status of the EIDL. The person on the other end of the line said emphatically that there was no way to get a status. If you have an application number, your application has been received. That's all she would say.
That's disappointing. I called the SBA myself and I spoke to someone, and she was actually very nice. And so I hate to say it, but at the end of the day, we are dealing with individuals, and maybe I got a really nice person. The only thing I could say is call again, and hopefully you get someone else, because I've gotten some relatively good feedback from people that call. All I can attribute it is to just that one person not being very helpful, which is shameful, but you know, I can't really make excuses for anybody.
Absolutely. So Oscar, I remember when the EIDL, as you said, started out with sort of this idea that it was a $10,000 grant. Regardless, you just apply for it, you get $10,000 as a grant, which then is basically an advance on that particular loan. And then all of a sudden it sort of translated to $1,000 per employee. Right. And then eventually went to, you know, you could get the up to $10,000 per employee as the grant piece of it, and then an additional $15,000 for a maximum of $25,000, when I believe it started and had up to like a $2 million. Do you know when it comes back? Is it going to go to more of the per employee, or is it going to be, you know, because it seems like, and when we talked to some of our congressional delegation, they said that the SBA kind of changed the rules on the EIDL themselves, and that wasn't what Congress intended for the EIDL to look like when they first funded it. Do you have any idea about that conversation in terms of where it might be? Is it going to be reset to the original rules, or is it going to start back sort of with the new rules that have been set?
You know, I really don't know, Deanna. I think my hope is that they don't mess around with it too much, because my hope initially, even when we were going through the first phase of funding, was that in the second, that Congress would chime in a little more and tighten things up and direct SBA on how to proceed. Because to the extent that they don't do that, then the Secretary of SBA or the Director of SBA, she's able to, her and her team are able to pretty much, you know, mold things as they run. And we found that to be problematic, because you're right. First it was one thing, then another, and that's just not a good way to attempt to alleviate a problem. So I'll be very eager to read what the new legislation says about those two programs. But at the moment, we don't have that.
Thank you, Oscar. I have one other question, which is again sort of looking at what you guys know in terms of small businesses in Oregon.
Sure.
If we look across the landscape in Oregon, what are the chances that, you know, the number of small businesses we have here, and the number of them that need assistance, how many are actually going to receive any of this sort of federal relief funds? Do you have any idea?
No, I think that what I can tell you though, and I unfortunately don't have it with me. I think I may have it on my laptop, which right now on my large monitor, but my laptop is downstairs. I think I came across something that said that the left coast actually didn't get a pretty big share of the pie, meaning Washington, Oregon, California didn't get a very large share. And that was based on a comparison of the entire universe of payroll versus the PPP loan amounts that came to those three states. It was actually very low, like in the 30s or 40%, whereas some other states, one in particular, actually, I think it was Nebraska, 85% of their universe of payroll got funded for PPP. So that was pretty incredible. And I don't know that, I'm not trying to say that something, you know, shady happened, but I think that what we can do is make sure that our applications are in. And right now we're talking about just a pipeline, but we need to make sure that our applications are in, and we need to, you know, hold our lenders accountable and say, okay, as soon as this opens up, I need to know that you're going to process it. Even if it takes all night, even if your staff has to come at 3 in the morning to push applications through, I think that that'll make a big difference. You know, the commitment that lenders have to working around the clock to push these things through the SBA. The SBA has a computer system that is referred to as E-Tran, And that's the system that has to process all the applications. When E-Tran reviews applications, it sort of does a quick underwriting, not really a true underwriting, but it basically scrubs information. Then it spits out a number. And that number is key, because once a lender gets back a number for that loan request, those funds are locked. So that person or that business, that lender, has a guarantee. And that means that we're pretty much done, because the only other step that's left is funding. But we need to make sure that our lenders push applications through the SBA so that everybody can get an E-Tran number. And so to try and answer your question, I think that all we can really do is be prepared ourselves, number one, and then keep our lenders accountable.
Oscar, thank you. I mean, that's the conversations we've been having with small businesses as well, in terms of really pushing their lenders to make sure that their applications are moving through, not getting stuck in a pile, and really leveraging the relationships that they've had with lenders over many years, and saying, you know, we've been a key customer. We need your help right now more than ever. Help us push this through to the SBA. And that's also what Marty Golden said was, you know, once you get that SBA approved number, that's basically your keys to the kingdom, right? You're going to get funded, right? Because they have a calculator on the other end, and they're, you know, determining how many loans they're approving based on how much money they have to spend. And when it's gone, it's gone. And they basically stop the pipeline.
That's true. That's how it works. So I think that if someone is thinking about applying for PPP, don't. I mean, you need to make a decision like as soon as possible, because you're either going to apply and get in the pipeline or you're not. And that's my best advice. It's like, just, in other words, you know, use the Nike logo, just do it. And then the other thing is this: if you apply and you're in the pipeline, you don't have a problem because you haven't even been approved. If you get approved, then you make a quick decision at that time too. Do I want these funds or not? Because you could always decline the money. And the other thing is that if you take the funds, you can always repay the funds. There's no prepayment penalty. So there really isn't anything to lose, and there's a lot to gain.
And I have one other question, just from a financial perspective. We have a lot of our small business members that are quite concerned about taking on debt. And so they like the grant programs because they're not taking on additional debt. And we had one of our other programs, we had a cash flow expert that basically was saying, you know, in this case, 1% money is not bad debt. Would you agree with that, Oscar?
I agree. There's been a little bit of controversy with some borrowers that have taken this money and said, you know, this is great money, so I'm going to take it. And if I don't use it all for payroll because I can't, for example, let me give you a concrete example. I think there's a restaurateur that applied for PPP and received the funds, and he wasn't able to hire all his staff because he's just doing online orders, and he doesn't need the same amount of staffing. So I think it was half of what he originally had. And he said the other amount is not going to be forgiven, so it's going to be a 1% loan, and I'm going to keep it as working capital so that when things finally do open up and I'm able to have customers coming through the door, I have money to react, you know, to respond to that demand and hire new people. And so for some folks, you know, it's gunpowder in the keg for brighter days. But it doesn't, in terms of lending, it doesn't get much better than that.
And that's a 2-year loan, is that correct?
It's a 2-year loan.
Got it.
Right.
All right, that's all the questions we have in the queue, so I'm going to let you move forward.
Well, so are you all able to hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I was having a little internet connectivity issue there for a moment. I am curious, and I have some questions of the members who are with us. We do have a bit more presentation to provide. But I am curious about the types of businesses that are with us today, and I know you have a good number, like 22 participants. So, you know, what I'm curious about is those who may be finding ways.
So I mean, you're breaking up again on my end. I don't know if anybody else is
Sorry.
having that problem. Yeah, they are. Sorry.
Those who are able to innovate through adversity. I'd like to hear from a member if they're on the call or on the Zoom call who may be innovating through adversity right now, if they'd like to share a story.
Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat comments, whatever works best for you. So I would just say, Tammy, things are pretty tough.
Things are tough. Things are tough. And so Oscar gave us a great amount of information about the EIDL and PPP. And the round to the phase 2, we hope to be hearing about later today. We're fingers crossed on that.
So,
what I heard about today was part of the phase 2 is also going to allow micro lenders and credit unions to be more part of the lending community. So you can be watching for that. There is an appropriation amount that will be going to micro lenders and to credit unions. So that should expand the lending environment a bit. The next slide that I have is really about diversifying. And you might wonder why during the harshest economic environment that we can remember in recent years, I'm talking to you about diversifying. Mostly I want you to know that services are available at no cost. If you are currently exporting, you may also be impacted by this economic crisis. This is a global pandemic. So I want you to be available, know of available resources for trade assistance. If you are a member on the Zoom call who is already importing or exporting, for you to be aware of this service.
Tammy, we have a couple of folks that have added their innovations. So
Okay.
Renee moved to online with partial inventory, and Crystal offers free local delivery to Hillsboro, Forest Grove, North Plains, Beaverton, and Aloha, curbside, solo shopping, and online.
And those sound like retail entrepreneurs to me. Are those both retail?
I believe so.
Excellent.
Yes, Renee is, yep, they are both retail. Thank you.
I would encourage you both to take a look at the retail meetup that we have going on. I'm hearing a good amount of stories right now about innovating through this adversity and working collectively as well. So retailers are beginning to come together with their businesses in really unique ways. So I encourage you to consider joining us there. As we move through this economic hardship period, this crisis, and we don't know how long it's going to take, there are other resources available that I wanted to make you aware of that are also at no cost, and you'll see those on the specialized services page. The one thing I want to do before I go there is to step back for just a minute and talk to you a little bit more deeply about what business advising is for a small business in crisis. What it can be for you is a lifeline, because what you have available in this period of time is a person who has experience in navigating through a period like this, who also has owned or is currently owning a small business. Those are the advisors who are on my team. They're highly specialized. They are also working together, and they're working together with other partners. So if we end up being an advisor for you and you have a need that is even outside of our team, we're going to know where that resource is. So the idea is that you are not alone. The idea is that you have an advisor who is trusted, who holds your information in confidence, and who is able to help you find the right resource in the least amount of time. Time is truly your greatest asset. So we take that very seriously. We care about you very deeply, and we work together with you to find the solutions that you need during this period of time. Oscar spoke about the capital access team. I provided a bit of information on global trade, but part of what you're going to be doing as you're looking to move on your path forward is maybe related to conducting some research. And we have access to no-cost market research for you. So just consider that as a possible resource for you in the future. I'm going to skip over the next couple of resources on this page, but I'd like Oscar to speak to the Latino outreach part of the specialized services, and maybe if you could just share some information about that for those of you who are part of the Latinx community or have friends who are, you might want to know about the service.
Yeah, sure. A group of SBDC advisors that are bilingual kind of got together and were brainstorming, and we realized that there was a lack of information in Spanish. So what we did is that we created a Facebook page where we are posting some information, but we're also advertising webinars such as this one. The name of the page is Latino SBDC. And in fact, I think later today at 2 o'clock, we're having a Zoominar in Spanish about the various things that business owners can do to get through these times. The one that we had last week was in Spanish as well, and it focused on the EIDL and the PPP loan. So if you're looking to have either yourself or some of your friends that are more comfortable in Spanish, let them know about Latino SBDC.
Oscar, I'm curious about the last week and this week presentation. Are they recorded?
Yes, they are recorded. So
Deanna, we can get you that link, Deanna, to the webinar that was done last week on the EIDL and PPP in Spanish. I think
that would be perfect.
Helpful.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
A lot of people ask us, where are you located? I think that in terms of SBDC, this is a view of the SBDC map. It is less critical a question now than ever before because we can help you regardless of where you live in the state. But the PCC SBDC has a center when it is open, and we are place-based. Not far from you at Willow Creek. So that's just information for you to know for the future. However, business advising via Zoom is something that we do every day. And so you don't have to leave your place of business or your home to have business advising. It is absolutely virtual. And this is key information for you in terms of after this presentation to be able to access the rapid response team. The SBDC at pcc.edu is the email address. When you email, let them know that you attended the Hillsboro Chamber of Commerce presentation today and that you would like to meet with a rapid response team member, and you'll get instructions on that. The main website that I give out ongoing is the bizcenter.org the bizcenter.org/COVID-19 is a really good website, and that's in the body of this presentation. But the bizcenter.org/Portland will also get you information. Why that website is important from my perspective is it is vetted on a daily basis. So it is being kept with up-to-date information. There is a lot of information flying around out there for small businesses, and more is not better. We want to get you fact-based, current, and relevant information as soon as possible so that your landscape becomes simpler and less confused, not more confused. So with that, I will turn it over to questions and answers. Deanna?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tammy and Oscar. Truly appreciate it. I will ask folks to either put their questions in the chat or to unmute yourself and just chime in. This is a great opportunity. Any questions you have, and I'm sure if they can't answer them, again, they have a portfolio of experts that they definitely can point you to get you the right answer you need. So someone just said that they missed the contact information for the retail meetup, but we're going to send this out, this PowerPoint presentation out to all of our attendees and make sure that you get access to those links. And John Gimry, I don't know if you know John, I know you do, Tammy, with Gimry Shoes, has been a client of SBDC and is singing your praises in the chat.
Thank you, John.
I have a question, and I also am a client of SBEC, and it's been great. So I applied for both EIDL and PPP, and I got I'm the one that said I didn't get any status from the SBA, and they said, well, if you have a number, then you're in queue, so just let it go. But on the PPP, as a micro business, I couldn't see any real value in applying for that because you get so little money and you have to account for 75% of that is payroll. And so I'm wondering, am I missing something? Because everybody else I know applied for PPP, and I did too, but I didn't really push that one as much. And I can't get a status from my bank on that either. So.
Which, if you don't mind me asking, which lender is that you were working with?
It's called Unified Equipment Finance. There's somebody that we have an existing loan with for equipment, and so they sent us an email and said, hey, if you want this loan, go through us. So I did.
But they won't give you a status at this point?
Right. So
Yeah,
I guess the real question, because I don't want to waste everybody's time, but if I contacted these, the business center cat.org, could I get some one-on-one on my questions?
You know what I would suggest there is to go to SBDC at pcc.edu.
Okay.
If you've worked with the SBDC, you know, you certainly could go back to your lead advisor, whoever that was for you, but you could request a meeting with Oscar through the SBDC at pcc.edu and suggest that, you know, that you were part of the conversation today with the Hillsboro Chamber of Commerce, and that you were directed to reach out to Oscar, and if you could get connected to Oscar directly.
Perfect, thank you.
See, it pays to attend the Small Business Solutions workshops. We get put at the head of the queue. Thank you for that, Tammy and Oscar. I appreciate that, because I can imagine your phones are ringing off the hook these days. I don't see any other questions in the queue, but I do have a question about, I know that the emergency board for the state of Oregon is meeting today. They've preliminarily put out that they are doing a grant program or some sort of relief program for small businesses. I believe it's about a $10 million amount, and it precludes you applying for that if you've already received any federal funding. So my guess would be that even if folks have applied for the EIDL and the PPP, but don't know where they're at in the pipeline, that they should probably go ahead and apply for the state funding as well, just in the event that they don't receive the federal funding. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Yeah, if you have not received a loan, you have not received a loan. So an application doesn't mean you have federal funding.
I was on a call yesterday with someone who said that they received the EIDL and it just showed up in their bank account. They didn't receive any confirmation. So they opened it up and it was like Christmas, but no confirmation. So that was a surprise, but you know, it's also unsettling for folks that are checking their bank account every morning for, did I get my stimulus funding yet? Did I get my EID funding? Did I get a grant that I applied for? And the grants, you know, just as a, I guess, a point of understanding the breadth of this situation, Washington County let out a grant, I think last week, and it was a 2-day window that was open they received 2,200 applications. They're going to be able to fund between 200 and 250 businesses.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of folks that are going to be left out of that opportunity as well. So I think, you know, any and all opportunities that come to you as a small business, you know, I mean, I think it's great to apply for those. So, oh, the emergency board meeting today is the state of Oregon. So someone's asking me about that. If you go on the Chamber's website of our COVID resources, you can see an outline of the draft of what they're proposing in terms of funding that's going to be approved by the e-board today. I believe it's a total of about $60 million, if I'm not mistaken, and in different pots and areas, whether it's rent relief or folks that have status issues and having some support in that area, small business relief, you know, PPE, I think, is also included in that in terms of helping offset for healthcare and hospitals and folks on the front line.
And Deanna, I would say this screenshot that Oscar brought up, that bizcenter.org/COVID-19, that is one of the best websites for current information coming out of the Oregon SBDC network, which is directly connected also with the SBA. So there are a lot of really great resources on that website. So with this particular PowerPoint presentation, we built it so that it would be a good leave behind for you. There's a myriad of tools that are available just on this website alone. Excellent,
thank you. I know we have linked to that many times as it's been updated, and really appreciate the fact that, you know, you make us look good, right? We put it on our website. It's good information, it's accurate information, it's updated information. And I just, you know, I've been, as you know, a fan of SBDC my entire career, which is long. And you know, and just to point that out, how long it's been, Jackie Babicky Peterson and I have gone back many years and together, and what a great asset and resource you have in your office, along with Oscar and your entire team, to be able, this is a point in time when businesses don't have any answers, and there's not a lot of folks out there that can do anything other than commiserate with them. So appreciate the fact that you've got people that are, you know, experts in financial and can help wade through that, and the many questions of what do I do, where do I go, what's the best loan for me, can I make it through this, and what can I do to make sure that I'm setting myself up and my employees up for the best possible outcome. I'm just watching the chat here.
We are very happy to be of service to you, and Oscar and I both have owned businesses. I've owned multiple. My biggest was 78 employees, and I can imagine what that would be like today if I were placed in this position. And so we are very happy to be of service to your team and to your business community.
Thank you so much. We do have a question on here about, is there a lender that you have seen has had a higher success rate that you would recommend? And I know that recommending lenders is not probably something you like to do. I will just chime in and say that I have heard our businesses talking about Key Bank, Columbia Bank, Heritage Bank, local community bank, that have done very good jobs for our Hillsboro businesses. So, you know, those are the ones that have come back to me, and then I have talked to our small businesses that said, hey, I got the PPP through Heritage or through Key Bank or through Columbia. So those are folks that are adept at managing through this process. I would suggest, you know, giving them a call and seeing if they're willing to take on your application and shepherd it through the process. But I'm open if you have other recommendations that you've heard.
Well, let me see, am I muted? No. No. The ones that I have heard that, because unfortunately, you're right, we can't really recommend banks, but we had a lot of clients, too many, come back to us and say that their lender was not willing to lend to them or just wasn't participating. And in those cases, we had to point them towards fintechs, you know, online lenders. As I mentioned, Intuit got into the game, Cabbage, I think PayPal. I mean, there's quite a few actually. And again, the local credit unions, I know I mentioned earlier that Point West recently got approved. So we can't endorse anybody. We can't tell you what they're going to do for you, but we can tell you that there are those lenders out there that are working with folks that got into this PPP program by getting approved by the SBA rather quickly, when in the past they actually were not approved lenders.
There was one I heard about yesterday, Deanna, called Lindio.
Lindio, L-I-N-D-O.
L-I-N-D-E-O, I think is how it is. Do you know of this one, Oscar? Noah Brockman was mentioning this one yesterday.
Yeah, they're another online lender. I'm not sure if they lend their own funds or if they work with the bank.
No, they don't. They don't. They're really a third party. But we heard from a restaurateur in Southern Oregon who was successful with them. So, you know, again, these are stories that we're hearing from the field that we're happy to share with you, but we can't, you know, say one way or the other why they are successful.
Was there one called BetterFin as well?
Yes, that was the one that Noah brought up a few weeks ago.
Right. Yeah. So I think that, you know, definitely if you have not had a relationship with a traditional bank, and you know, these are opportunities because, you know, as you mentioned, they've secluded a certain amount of funding for these non-traditional micro type of lending. So out of that $350 billion, might get that right, 50 billion, it's always such a big number to say. There's a portion of it that is secluded for, you know, your micro lenders, your new community banks that have just, or federal credit unions that have just come online. So those are options for folks that have been like closed out because they haven't had a relationship with a traditional lender. So that to me would also be a good opportunity because they're going to have money that no one else has access to.
Right.
All right. I'm going to call for any last questions before I bless and release you.
Well, and if you do have last questions after we leave, you can easily find us at sbdc@pcc.edu. You can find myself or Oscar. We're here to be of service to you. So don't hesitate to reach out.
We did have a final question. Will there be any unforeseen consequences later for receiving a PPP or an EIDL?
That's kind of a tough question. Unforeseen consequences. Not that I can think of. I think that the only consequence I could foresee, and I have advised clients not to do this, is if someone commingles personal assets, you know, checking accounts with business, and then if there is any chance that someday somehow they'll do some sort of SBA audit or anything like that, and they find that you didn't use the funds for what you said you were going to use them for, that's the only unforeseen consequence I could see at this point in time. However, saying that, having said that, I don't know that the SBA will ever have any desire, time, or resource to do that. But just keep it separate.
Well, right. And I would also say this is a time for planning. So, you know, Oscar said, you know, move quickly to action. I completely agree with that, and go forward with a plan. So, you know, today after this presentation, sit back and think about what are you going to do with the money if you should receive it? How does that look for your business? What does your current cash plan look like? And if you need, again, if you need assistance with going over those things, you could certainly meet with one of our members of the rapid response team to get really square with yourself about what you're planning to do. Because if you have a plan, there's probably not very many questions you can't answer. And I think that's the main thing that I would leave you with.
Great advice. Thank you again, Tammy and Oscar, for taking your time today. Always so beneficial. Great in terms of resources and education and information. Really, truly appreciate you taking this time with us, and want to wish everybody a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna.